When I first got assigned to the new delivery route, I didn't think much of it. Another cluster of buildings. Another stack of packages that needed to be ferried from the back of my van to strangers' doorsteps. But the moment I pulled up in front of the gleaming glass exterior of the Westbrook Apartments, something in me shifted. The building didn't look like the kind of place I usually delivered to. Most of my old routes had been suburban houses with cracked driveways, chain-link fences, and barking dogs that always seemed to know the exact moment I stepped out of the truck. Westbrook was different. The entrance was framed with clean brick and steel, polished so well it caught the afternoon light and made the whole building glow. A revolving glass door spun quietly as residents came and went, some clutching briefcases, others balancing yoga mats or walking tiny dogs with sweaters that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. I parked in the loading zone, grabbed my handheld scanner, and took a deep breath. It felt like stepping into a new stage of life, even if I was just here to haul boxes. The lobby was something out of a magazine. Polished marble floors stretched out beneath my boots, so spotless I hesitated to take a step for fear of leaving dust behind. A chandelier hung above, shaped like a starburst, its light bouncing off brass fixtures and green velvet chairs. To one side, a concierge desk sat manned by a middle-aged man in a sharp suit, who gave me the kind of nod that said he'd seen 100 delivery drivers already today. I started toward the elevators, the weight of the first stack of packages pressing into my arms, when I noticed the little quirks of the place. Every building has them, and they're the things you don't pick up until you really start looking. The woman sitting in the corner with her poodle was more interested in gossip magazines than the dog itself. A man in gym shorts leaned against the wall, scrolling on his phone, dripping sweat onto the marble like he owned the place. A kid zipped across the lobby on rollerblades, earning a sharp, "no wheels indoors" from the concierge. It was bustling, but in that choreographed way only upscale apartments seemed to manage. Everyone was busy, everyone was in a rush, and yet everything looked perfectly in place. I told myself to keep my head down, focus on the deliveries. First days on new routes are always tricky. Finding apartment numbers, figuring out which elevators actually go where, navigating the maze of hallways. Still, I couldn't shake the small buzz of excitement thrumming through me. Maybe it was just nerves, but it felt like something more. The first hour flew by in a blur of knocking on doors, squinting at names printed on shipping labels, and awkwardly nodding when residents opened their doors to snatch their packages without so much as a thank you. It was nothing new. People order things, I drop them off, end of transaction. And then I saw him. I didn't even catch his name that first time. He was just another person in the hallway, another stranger I was supposed to pass by on my way to the next door. But something about him made me pause for a second longer than I should have. He stood at the far end of the corridor, leaning casually against his doorframe like he'd been waiting for someone. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just slightly into his eyes, he looked out of place in the most distracting way possible. While the rest of the building buzzed with frantic energy, he seemed completely still, like the world was rushing around him and he didn't need to move. I glanced down at my scanner, pretending to check the next address. My heart ticked a little faster, the way it does when you catch sight of someone you know is going to matter, even if you can't explain why. He didn't say anything, not that time. He just gave me a polite nod, his lips twitching into the barest hint of a smile as I passed with my stack of boxes. I mumbled something back, a half-formed greeting, and kept walking. But the image of him stayed burned in my mind long after the elevator doors closed behind me. For the rest of the shift, I couldn't stop replaying it. Why had he caught my attention like that? Plenty of people lived in the building. I'd seen fitness guys, businesswomen in suits, even a teenager in pajamas carrying a bucket of fried chicken. But none of them had lodged themselves in my thoughts the way he had, with nothing more than a nod. By the time I finished my last delivery and returned to the truck, I was grinning like an idiot. Not because anything had happened, it hadn't, but because it felt like the start of something. A spark. A whisper of curiosity I couldn't explain. And if there's one thing I've learned about sparks, it's that they don't stay quiet for long. Evening shifts have a rhythm all their own. The lobby of the Westbrook Apartments was quieter now, the chandelier dimmed to a warmer glow, and the concierge had swapped his sharp jacket for something looser, more casual. Most residents were already tucked away behind their locked doors, watching TV, cooking dinner, or scrolling through their phones. I was down to my last 3 packages, the kind of stragglers that always seem to take forever. My shoulders ached, and my legs begged for rest. But something about the calmness of the halls at night made the final stretch feel less like work and more like exploring a secret world most people never see. I checked my scanner. Apartment 4B. Same name I'd seen earlier in the week. Same unit I'd walked past and caught a glimpse of the man leaning against his doorframe. My pulse picked up a notch, though I couldn't explain why. It was just another delivery. Nothing special. Still, I caught myself adjusting my shirt before knocking. There was a shuffle of footsteps from the other side, the sound of something being set down, and then the door swung open. And there he was, this time not leaning casually, not dressed in dark jeans and a fitted shirt. No, this time he was standing barefoot, hair damp and curling slightly at the ends, droplets of water sliding down the line of his collarbone. And the only thing between him and complete exposure was a white towel wrapped around his waist, clinging precariously to his hips. My brain short-circuited. For a second, I just stood there with the box in my hands, every coherent thought fleeing as my eyes darted, too quickly, from his face, down to his chest, then immediately back up like I'd been caught doing something illegal. Delivery, I stammered, thrusting the package forward a little too fast. The corner of the box bumped his hand, and I nearly dropped it altogether. He chuckled, low and amused. Perfect timing. I was just getting out of the shower. No kidding, I muttered, before I could stop myself. My cheeks burned hot. He tilted his head, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. I hope you don't mind water drops on your delivery slip. He reached for the handheld scanner, his fingers brushing against mine, warm and damp. I tried to focus, I really did, but the way the towel shifted as he leaned forward made my pulse spike. It's fine. Waterproof ink, I managed, though my voice cracked halfway through. He laughed again, this time fuller, richer, as if he enjoyed watching me struggle. Good to know. Guess you're prepared for all kinds of hazards. Huh. I swallowed hard. Yeah. Dogs, rain, towels. Smooth. Real smooth. He signed the screen with an elegant swirl of his finger, far too casual about the whole thing. When he handed the scanner back, another drop of water slid from his hair, landing squarely on the screen. He gave me a mock apologetic shrug. Guess that one's on the house. I tried to laugh, but it came out as more of a strangled sound. No worries. Adds character. He held the package to his chest, the cardboard darkening slightly where it touched his damp skin. For a brief moment, I wondered what it would feel like to press my palm against the same spot. Then I immediately shoved the thought away, horrified at myself. This was work. Professionalism. I was here to deliver a box, not fantasize about the customer. But damn if it wasn't the hardest professional moment of my life. Thanks for the late delivery, he said, his tone softer now, almost genuine beneath the teasing. Most people would have dumped it with the concierge. I don't mind, I said quickly. Too quickly. I mean, it's my job. That's what I do. His eyes lingered on me for a moment, curious, like he was trying to read something in my face. Then he gave another small smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes but was warm all the same. Well, I appreciate it. Really. I nodded, gripping the scanner like it was a lifeline. Okay. Have a good night. Night, he said, still smiling as he stepped back into his apartment. The door clicked shut, leaving me standing in the hallway, heart racing, hands shaking like I'd just run a marathon. I exhaled, long and shaky, and stared down at my scanner screen, the faint smudge of water still gleaming there. My reflection in the black glass looked ridiculous. Wide-eyed, red-faced, and thoroughly rattled. I walked back toward the elevator, each step feeling like it echoed louder than it should. My head spun with questions I had no business asking. Who just casually opens the door in a towel like that? Did he know it would throw me off? Was it an accident? Or was he? No, don't go there. I jabbed the elevator button and tried to will my heartbeat back to normal. It was just one delivery, one customer, one towel. That was all. But as the doors slid shut and I caught my reflection again in the mirrored paneling, I couldn't deny the truth. I was flustered, intrigued, and if I was being completely honest with myself, I couldn't wait to deliver another package to 4B. The next few days blurred together in the way they always do when you're working long shifts. Boxes stacked high, names and addresses flashing across the scanner screen, elevators that always seemed to take too long. But there was one detail that cut through the monotony. For B. Every morning when I scanned through my route, his name appeared at least once. Sometimes more. First, I thought nothing of it. People order a lot of stuff online. Groceries, gadgets, random knickknacks they probably don't need but buy anyway because an ad convinced them it would change their life. That was normal. What wasn't normal was how consistent it became. Day after day, without fail, there was a package for him. Sometimes small, sometimes bigger, but always there. And every time I knocked, I felt that now familiar thrum of anticipation in my chest. The one that made me straighten my posture and check if my shirt had gotten wrinkled. It was ridiculous. He was just another customer. And yet, he wasn't. The first time after the towel incident, he opened the door fully dressed, jeans and a simple t-shirt. He smiled like he'd been expecting me. "Don't worry, no towels today," he teased, leaning against the doorframe as he signed. I laughed, a little too loudly. "Good to know. You're stepping up your professionalism." "Oh, so now I'm the one who has to be professional?" His smirk was quick, sharp, but warm underneath. "I thought that was your job." Touché. Another day, another package. This time, when I handed it over, he held onto the box a second longer than necessary. "You always deliver so late. You must be exhausted by now. Want some water?" My first instinct was to decline. We weren't supposed to linger. Schedules were tight. But his eyes had this earnestness behind the teasing, and before I knew it, I was nodding. "Sure, thanks." He disappeared into the apartment and came back with a cold bottle of water. I took it, my fingers brushing his again, and muttered a thanks. "No problem," he said, leaning casually against the doorframe like he had all the time in the world. "So, what's the life of a delivery guy like? Must see some weird things." That conversation was the first time we went beyond surface-level banter. I told him about the lady who ordered 12 bags of potting soil and lived on the 5th floor with no elevator. He laughed so hard I thought the towel was going to make a comeback. After that, it became routine. Every day, I found myself saving his delivery for last, rearranging the order just so my shift would end with him. It gave me something to look forward to, like a reward for slogging through the endless stairs and heavy boxes. My coworkers teased me about always looking a little too cheerful at the end of my route, but I brushed it off, because how was I supposed to explain that one guy in for B had somehow become the highlight of my day? Sometimes it was just a quick joke. "Careful. This box is fragile, just like my ego." Sometimes it was small compliments that caught me off guard. "You always look so focused. It's kind of impressive." Or, "You must be strong to carry all these around. I should hire you as my personal mover." Each line landed like a spark, light but enough to warm me. One evening, after a long shift, I arrived at his door sweaty, tired, and probably looking like I'd run a marathon in steel-toed boots. He still grinned as he took the package. "Rough day. You could say that." I wiped my forehead with my sleeve. He leaned a little closer, his voice dropping just enough to feel personal. "Well, you still showed up. That counts for something." I swallowed, my mouth dry despite the water bottle he'd pressed into my hand earlier that week. "Just doing my job." "Maybe," he said, eyes gleaming, "but you do it better than anyone else I've met." I walked away that night with my pulse thrumming in my ears, the compliment looping in my head long after I left the building. But here's the thing. The more packages I delivered, the more a question started to form in the back of my mind. Nobody orders this much. Nobody. At first, I chalked it up to coincidence, maybe a busy streak of online shopping. But when the boxes started looking suspiciously light, almost empty, I couldn't ignore it anymore. a shoe-sized box that felt like it had nothing in it, a padded envelope that barely rustled, a medium package that seemed to contain nothing but air. Was he really ordering something new every single day? Or was he? The thought made me laugh at myself. It was ridiculous. Who orders packages just to see the delivery guy? That wasn't real life. That was the stuff of cheesy rom-coms, the kind of story you'd tell your friends with an exaggerated eye roll. And yet, every time his name popped up on my scanner, a part of me couldn't help but wonder. By the end of that week, I'd developed a new ritual. I'd park the van, glance through the scanner, and smile when I saw "for B" at the bottom of the list. The rest of the deliveries became a countdown. Apartment 7A? Just one step closer. 12C? Almost there. 2D? Now it's time. I'd knock, heart already speeding, and wait to see which version of him would answer. Playful, teasing, quietly kind. Every night was a surprise, and every night I found myself walking away both flustered and wanting more. And though I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, deep down I knew it. There was no way this was just coincidence. Something about 4B was deliberate, and the thought of that both thrilled me and terrified me. By the time the second week rolled around, even I had to admit something was off. "Dude," I muttered one morning in the warehouse, flipping through my scanner screen. Sure enough, there it was again. For B. Another box. Another delivery. "What's up?" My coworker, Marcus, leaned over my shoulder, chewing on a protein bar. "Look at this," I said, tilting the screen. "That guy in Westbrook, he's ordering more boxes than an online shop. I swear, if I didn't know better, I'd think he was trying to build a fort out of cardboard." Marcus chuckled. "Maybe he's got money to burn. Or maybe he's just really into Amazon Prime." Every single day, I pressed, like clockwork, and half the boxes feel empty. Marcus smirked. "Sounds like somebody's got a secret admirer." I rolled my eyes. "It's not like that." But even as I said it, the words felt hollow. That evening, when I knocked on 4B, he opened the door wearing a soft hoodie and sweats, looking far more casual than the towel incident, but somehow no less distracting. His hair was messy, like he'd been lounging on the couch all day. "Evening delivery hero," he greeted, smiling as if I was the highlight of his night. "Another package," I said, handing it over. "What are you even ordering, anyway? You've got to be running out of things to buy." He grinned, tapping the box. "Trade secret." I narrowed my eyes. "What, like illegal pigeons or something?" That earned me a laugh, warm, genuine, the kind of laugh that fills the hallway. "If I told you, I'd ruin the mystery." I shook my head, but I couldn't stop the smile tugging at my lips. It didn't stop at packages anymore. Each visit stretched a little longer, turning into conversations that felt less like customer and delivery guy and more like neighbors catching up. One night, he asked about my music taste. We ended up swapping playlists, him scribbling a recommendation on the back of the delivery slip. "Check out the paper kites. Perfect for late drives." The next time, he asked if I'd seen a certain movie. I hadn't, so he launched into a dramatic, hilarious summary that had me laughing so hard I nearly dropped my scanner. Other nights, he gave me neighborhood tips like a seasoned tour guide. "Avoid the taco place on 3rd. They serve salsa like it's lava." Or, "There's a cafe 2 blocks down that makes the best iced lattes. If you ever take a break, that's the spot." Little things, casual things, but each one chipped away at the invisible wall between us. And then there were the looks. Took me a while to notice them, to really see them for what they were. The way his eyes lingered a second too long when I spoke. The quick glances that flicked from my face to my chest, then back again. The half-smile he wore whenever I fumbled over my words, like he enjoyed watching me trip over myself. It wasn't just in my head. At least, I didn't think it was. The night it all shifted came with a small, medium-sized box that felt suspiciously light. When I handed it to him, he raised his brows like he was holding in a joke. "Careful," he said. "This one's fragile." "Yeah? What's in it?" I teased. "Guess you'll never know." He winked and disappeared inside. Later, as I walked back to the van, I realized I still had the delivery slip folded in my pocket. When I pulled it out, a tiny piece of paper fluttered out with it. My breath caught. It was a note, just a quick scribble in his messy handwriting. Thanks for always showing up, even when I'm probably your most annoying stop. For B. I stared at it under the yellow glow of the street lamp, my chest tightening in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just playful anymore. It was personal. I tucked the note back into my jacket like it was something fragile, something I wasn't ready to share with anyone else. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the note replaying over and over in my mind. What was I supposed to make of this? Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe he was ordering boxes just to see me. The thought sent a thrill racing through me, followed quickly by panic. Because if it was true, then what did that mean for me? For us? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that I looked forward to those knocks on his door more than I should. That his smile stayed with me long after I left the building. That I found myself rearranging my route just to save him for last, like dessert at the end of a long meal. And now, I was starting to think he knew it too. The next morning, Marcus caught me staring at my scanner again. For B? He asked, grinning like he already knew the answer. I shoved the scanner into my bag. Shut up. Hey, I'm just saying. Nobody orders that much stuff unless they've got an agenda. And it looks like you're the agenda. I tried to brush it off, but the truth was already lodged in my chest. Every package, every conversation, every look, they weren't coincidences. He was doing this on purpose. And for reasons I didn't yet dare to say out loud, I was glad. By the third week, I had fully surrendered to the rhythm of it. Wake up, scan the route, and wait for 4BS name to flash on the screen like a secret promise. It wasn't just about delivering boxes anymore. It was about ending my day with a spark, a smile, and maybe another conversation that lingered longer than it should. That evening was no different. The sun had dipped low, washing the Westbrook apartments in a soft orange glow, and I was down to my last delivery. The box felt light, maybe empty again, and I couldn't help grinning as I walked the familiar hallway. I knocked, and when the door swung open, he was there, hair slightly tousled, a sweatshirt hanging loose on his frame. No towel this time, no deliberate spectacle. Just him, relaxed, effortlessly magnetic. Evening, he said, taking the package. You're always in a rush, aren't you? I opened my mouth to give my usual half-excuse. Tight schedule, lots of stops, but he tilted his head, studying me. Then, with a smile that was equal parts mischief and sincerity, he asked, "Why don't you stay for coffee? Just one cup, unless you're running off to another towel emergency." I froze. Every instinct drilled into me screamed, "No lingering. Be professional. Keep moving." But another part of me, the part that kept rearranging deliveries just to see him last, whispered, "Say yes." My mouth was dry, but I managed a nod. Yeah, I could stay. Just one cup. His grin widened. Good. Come on in. The first thing I noticed was how warm his apartment felt. Not just temperature, though the heater hummed quietly, but in atmosphere. Soft lighting pooled from a lamp in the corner, throwing a golden glow across the living room. A record player sat against the wall, vinyl sleeves stacked neatly beside it. A half-finished puzzle was spread across the coffee table, edges forming a frame for an image I couldn't yet see. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, gesturing toward the couch. "Coffee's my specialty." I hovered awkwardly by the door until he disappeared into the kitchen, then finally sat down, resting my scanner on my knee like a security blanket. The apartment smelled faintly of cedar and something sweet, vanilla, maybe. It was lived in, not staged like so many of the sterile units I'd seen. Cozy, personal. From the kitchen, I heard the clink of mugs, the hiss of a kettle. He hummed under his breath, something soft and familiar, and I found myself smiling before I even realized it. He returned a few minutes later carrying 2 mugs, steam curling upward. He handed me one, and our fingers brushed. Just a fleeting touch, but enough to send a current straight through me. "Careful," he said, smirking. "It's hot. Don't want to be responsible for a workplace injury." I laughed, shaking my head. You'd probably just order another box of Band-Aids so I'd have to deliver them. Guilty as charged. He sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, and took a sip. For a while, we just drank in silence. The only sounds the faint crackle of the record player and the occasional clink of ceramic. It was surprisingly easy, comfortable in a way I hadn't expected. Then he leaned back, a playful glint in his eyes. You know, I don't think I'll ever live down the towel incident. I nearly choked on my coffee. Oh God, please don't remind me. He laughed, a full-bodied sound that lit up the room. The look on your face. I thought you were going to drop the box and run for the hills. I almost did, I admitted, covering my face with one hand. I swear, I've never been more flustered in my life. Well, for what it's worth, he said, lowering his mug. You handled it like a pro. Mostly. Mostly. I raised an eyebrow. Okay, maybe not when you called out towels as one of your workplace hazards. I groaned, sinking lower into the couch. I can't believe you remember that. Oh, I remember everything, he said softly, and for a second the teasing gave way to something heavier, something that made my pulse quicken. We shifted back into lighter conversation after that. Movies, music, neighborhood gossip, but underneath the banter was an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. Every time his knee brushed mine, every time his eyes lingered, I felt it. A pull. At one point, he asked, "So what made you take this job? You seem too sharp to be just hauling boxes." I shrugged, staring into my mug. Needed steady work. It's not glamorous, but I like it. I like moving, seeing different places. And sometimes, I glanced at him, smiling. Sometimes you meet interesting people. He held my gaze, his smile slow, deliberate. Interesting, huh? I'll take that as a compliment. It is, I said quietly. The room felt smaller then, cozier, like the golden light had folded us into a bubble where only the two of us existed. Eventually, I drained the last of my coffee and set the mug down on the table. He reached forward at the same time to grab it, and our hands met in the middle, brushing again. This time, neither of us pulled away right away. His fingers lingered just a second too long on mine, warm and steady. My breath caught. He didn't say anything, and neither did I. The moment stretched between us. Quiet, charged, fragile. And then, with a small smile, he released the mug and leaned back against the couch. "Thanks for staying," he said softly. I swallowed, my heart still hammering. "Thanks for the coffee." When I finally stood to leave, the air between us felt different. Not just playful anymore. Not just banter. Something deeper had sparked. And I knew, as I stepped back into the hallway, that I wasn't just looking forward to the next delivery. I was looking forward to him. It happened on a Tuesday, one of those dreary days where the sky was gray, and the city felt like it had been wrapped in a damp wool blanket. I was lugging a stack of parcels through the lobby when I overheard the concierge chatting with a woman balancing a Pomeranian in her arms. "Of course, the manager's son moved in a few months ago," she said breezily, like everyone should have already known. "That's 4B, you know. Such a nice young man. His father practically runs this whole building." I froze mid-step. The manager's son? I nearly dropped the packages right there. My chest tightened as the implications hit all at once. He wasn't just some charming neighbor with a suspicious shopping habit. He was the manager's son, the guy with enough sway in the building to make my job a nightmare if he wanted. Suddenly, all the playful banter, the coffee, even the brush of his fingers against mine. Everything felt complicated. Dangerous, even. What if the manager thought I was being unprofessional? What if it looked like I was taking advantage? By the time I finished my route that night, the thought had burrowed deep in my head like a splinter. The next few days I tried to pull back. No more lingering. No more rearranging my deliveries just to end with him. I knocked, handed over the package, accepted his jokes with a polite smile, and left as quickly as I could. The first time he tilted his head, confused. "Rushing off already? Busy night," I said, forcing a grin. The second time his smile faltered. "You okay? You seem different." "Just tired," I muttered, avoiding his eyes. But I wasn't just tired. I was conflicted, because despite my best efforts, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way his eyes lit up when he laughed. The warmth of his apartment. The comfort of sharing a cup of coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. The note he'd slipped me, folded neatly into a package. Those things weren't accidents. They weren't casual. Were they? I didn't know anymore. By Friday, the tension between us was thick enough to cut with a box cutter. I knocked on his door, handed him yet another suspiciously light package, and turned to leave before he could say anything. But this time he didn't let me slip away. Wait! I froze, my hand hovering over the strap of my delivery bag. Slowly I turned back. He was standing in the doorway, the box forgotten at his side. His brow furrowed in something that looked dangerously close to hurt. "Did I do something?" he asked quietly. I blinked. "What?" "You've been different," he said. "Quieter. You barely talk to me anymore. Did I cross a line?" The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. He wasn't teasing. He wasn't playing. He was genuinely asking. "No," I said quickly, then hesitated. "At least, not exactly." His frown deepened. "Then what is it?" I shifted my weight, my throat tight. "I found out who you are. You're not just another tenant. You're the manager's son. And if anyone sees me hanging around your place, drinking coffee instead of delivering packages, it's gonna look bad. For me. Maybe for you too." For a moment, silence stretched between us. He leaned against the doorframe, studying me with unreadable eyes. Then, softly, he said, "So that's what this is about." I nodded, heat rising in my cheeks. I don't want anyone thinking I'm stepping out of line. That I'm taking advantage of the situation." His expression softened, the corners of his mouth curving upward into a sad little smile. "You really think I'd let my dad mess with you? Or that I'd play games like that?" I opened my mouth, then shut it again, because honestly, I didn't know what to think. He stepped closer, closing the gap between us until he was just a few feet away. "I don't order packages because I need them," he admitted. "Half of them are empty. I do it because it means I get to see you. That's it. No strings, no tricks. Just me wanting to see you." My chest tightened. "Why me?" "Because," he said simply, "you make my day better. Every single time." The words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. I didn't know what to say. Part of me still wanted to retreat, to protect myself from the risk. But another part, the part that replayed his laugh at night, that carried his note in my jacket pocket, ached to believe him. I swallowed hard. "You don't make this easy, you know?" He chuckled softly. "I'm not trying to make it hard. I'm just trying to be honest." His gaze held mine, steady and open. And for the first time, I realized just how much trust he was offering me. Not as the manager's son, not as some privileged tenant, but as himself. When I finally left that night, the air between us felt different. He hadn't pushed, hadn't demanded more than I was ready to give. He'd just told me the truth, and left me with a choice. And as I walked down the hallway, heart pounding, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a game. It was real, and I wasn't sure I could pull away from it anymore. The following night, I found myself staring at the last box on my route, the one with his name on it. My heart thudded just looking at the label. I knew something had shifted between us after that conversation. He'd laid it bare. The boxes weren't about stuff. They were about me. And now, every step down the hallway to 4B felt heavier with possibility. When he opened the door, he didn't greet me with a smirk or a teasing quip. Instead, he stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. "Coffee?" he asked softly. I hesitated only a second before nodding. Inside, the same warm glow filled the apartment, but the air was different. Less playful, more charged. He made 2 mugs of coffee, set them on the table, and sat across from me. His hands wrapped around his cup like he needed the warmth to steady himself. Finally, he exhaled. "Okay, no more pretending." I raised an eyebrow. "Pretending?" He laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, The packages. You've probably figured it out by now. Half of them are junk. Some of them are literally empty. Turns out boxes were the cheapest excuse I could find to talk to you. For a moment, all I could do was stare at him. He looked so unguarded. Eyes wide, shoulders hunched slightly, waiting for me to laugh or walk out. Instead, I let out a shaky chuckle. That might be the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. His lips quirked upward. Ridiculous enough to work, though. I set my mug down, leaning forward. You really went through all that trouble just to see me? Yes, he said simply, no hesitation. Because every time you showed up at my door, it felt like the best part of my day. And I didn't want it to stop. My chest tightened. I should have felt foolish. Should have scolded him for making me question my professionalism, for making me doubt. But instead, I felt something else. Relief, gratitude, and beneath it all, the truth I'd been carrying around for weeks. I thought I was going crazy, I admitted. Rearranging my route just to save you for last. Looking forward to seeing you like it was some kind of reward. I told myself it was just coincidence. But I wanted it too. His smile softened, slow and real. So what now? Do we keep playing delivery games? Or? I shook my head. No more games. If this is real. I paused, searching his eyes. Then I want it to be real, not hidden in boxes or excuses. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. Real sounds good. We decided to keep it simple. No big declarations, no rushing. Just a first date. 2 nights later, I met him outside the building after my shift. He wasn't holding a package, wasn't leaning against his doorframe like always. He was just standing there, hands shoved in his pockets, smiling at me like he'd been waiting forever. Hungry? He asked. Starving. We walked down the block to a little cafe he'd mentioned once before, the one with the iced lattes and mismatched chairs. It wasn't fancy, but it felt right. Cozy. Safe. Inside, we slid into a booth near the window. The place smelled like garlic and fresh bread, the low hum of conversation wrapping around us. He ordered pasta. I went with a sandwich. When the food arrived, neither of us seemed all that focused on eating. Instead, we talked. Really talked. About stupid things like our worst jobs. His was scooping ice cream during a heat wave. Mine was moving furniture up 5 flights of stairs for $10 an hour. About music we loved. About shows we couldn't stand. He made me laugh so hard I nearly choked on my sandwich. And when I teased him about the towel incident again, his ears went pink. And somewhere between the laughter and the casual touches, his knee brushing mine under the table, his hand grazing mine when we both reached for the breadbasket, I felt it. The spark, no longer hidden behind excuses, no longer tangled in doubt. Just there. After dinner, we stepped outside into the cool night air. The city buzzed around us. Cars rushing by, neon signs flickering, the scent of rain lingering from earlier. He shoved his hands back into his pockets, looking both nervous and hopeful. Thanks for coming out with me, he said. Thanks for asking, I replied, smiling. We stood there for a moment, neither of us ready to say goodnight. The streetlight above us cast a soft glow, painting everything in silver and shadow. And then, slowly, he stepped closer. I felt his breath before I felt his lips, warm, tentative, lingering just a second before pressing softly against mine. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was careful, honest, the kind of kiss that said, "This is real. This is ours." When we finally pulled back, he laughed quietly, almost shy. Guess that's better than hiding notes in packages. I grinned, my heart racing. Yeah, definitely better. We walked back to the building together, shoulders brushing, the silence between us comfortable now. And as we stepped inside, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, it wasn't just about boxes or excuses anymore. It was about us. It's funny how quickly routines can change. A few months ago, I'd end every route staring at a scanner screen, bracing myself for yet another suspiciously light box with 4B stamped on the label. Now, I still walk those familiar hallways, but when I get to his door, there's no package waiting. No cardboard, no signatures. Just him, usually holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee, a smile tugging at his lips. Delivery hero, he'll tease, pressing a cup into my hand. Breakfast on the house. Sometimes it's coffee and a bagel. Other times it's pancakes he swears he doesn't burn, though I've learned to keep syrup handy just in case. Either way, the ritual has become ours. I finish my route, and he's there waiting. Not with boxes, but with something far better. Our relationship grew the way ivy creeps up a wall. Slow, steady, unhurried, but relentless all the same. There were cozy nights curled up on his couch, half watching movies we never finished because we were too busy talking. Mornings where I'd swing by even off the clock, trading uniforms for sweatshirts, just to share coffee without the ticking clock of my shift. We built inside jokes that stitched our days together, laughing about fragile towel deliveries, poking fun at how many packages it must have taken before I caught on. Whenever we passed the concierge in the lobby, he'll whisper, "Careful, don't let them see us breaking package protocol." And I'll roll my eyes, fighting a grin. Little things, ordinary things, that somehow feel extraordinary when they're ours. Of course, it wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt. Me worrying about the line between professional and personal. Him worrying I'd get tired of his silly excuses. But those conversations only pulled us closer. We learned how to be honest, how to laugh through the awkwardness, how to let the small fears dissolve in the warmth of something bigger. It wasn't about boxes anymore. It was about mornings spent shoulder to shoulder making breakfast, evenings tangled in blankets while the city buzzed outside, and all the quiet moments in between. One night, we sat on his balcony under a blanket, the city lights flickering like fireflies. He leaned against me, head on my shoulder, and whispered, "You know, I still have some of those empty boxes in the closet." I laughed. "What, planning to recycle them for old time's sake?" "Maybe," he said, grinning, "or maybe I'll keep one forever, as a reminder of the dumbest, luckiest plan I ever pulled off." I shook my head, kissing the top of his hair. "You're ridiculous. Ridiculously in love with you," he corrected. And my heart did that thing it always does when I realize just how much he means it. Now, when I think about how it all started, it still feels surreal. I was just a guy on a delivery route, checking off packages and clocking hours. He was just a neighbor in 4B with a mischievous grin and a towel that nearly gave me a heart attack. But somehow, out of cardboard and coffee, we built something real, something lasting. And maybe that's the point. Love doesn't always arrive with grand gestures or sweeping declarations. Sometimes it slips in quietly, tucked inside ordinary days, disguised as a knock on the door or a scribbled note hidden in a box. These days, when I hand him coffee instead of a package, I think about that first delivery. The awkward fumbling, the flustered smile, the way he turned something mundane into something unforgettable. I smile because I know the truth now. I went to deliver a package, but what I really delivered was my heart. And this time it wasn't signed for, it was returned. If the story made you smile, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more heartfelt love stories, and tell me in the comments. Have you ever found something extraordinary in the most ordinary place?